What's up, Internet? Welcome to On the Screen, the monthly podcast where we discuss a variety of topics revolving around the media we consume on the screen. I'm Tomato Man from YieldTomato Gaming on YouTube, and joining us this month is Zombie Hand and Geek Scorpio from Gaming Theater Presents, as well as my good buddy Yield Man, who is a gaming enthusiast and father of four. Today,
Hello.
we are going to be discussing where to go? There it is. Sorry, I have things listed here funny. But today we are going to be experiencing a bit of sequel shock as we talk about Final Fantasy VII and Final Fantasy VIII.
Hey.
Now, who wants to start?
Okay, who?
What happened there?
Everyone kind of just didn't want to say anything, I guess.
I heard who.
Who wants to start?
I mean, I have a lot of feelings about both, but I don't know what direction to take them because I feel like I could talk about this for a long ass time.
Okay, well in that case, I guess I'll start then. If
Go for
nobody
it.
else has the thing.
By all
So
means.
here's, going into Final Fantasy VII. It was really unique the first time it came out on the basis that before Final Fantasy VII, everything, a lot of RPGs around and before that time frame were all high fantasy. You know, castles, swords, and such. And then
Traditional.
Final Fantasy VII, traditional, yeah, which is not a bad thing. It's just that
No,
was
no.
sort of the norm. Around that time in Final Fantasy VII came out 1997, right?
That's correct.
97, 98. Around that time, there was a few games that wanted to experiment with things that were against the norm, and it just comes up once in a while. And so they went with, I want to say, like this more edgy techno vibe with it, like a type of, I wouldn't say steampunk, or like a type of.
It's a little bit steampunk.
It's a little bit steampunk.
It's
yeah.
a technological renaissance.
Yeah. Because you're not going after the big empire out there, you're going after a corporation. And you have a main character which is stoic and silent, but there's more of a background for why that character is stoic and silent, not just because the game says so.
I have a question.
Sure.
Which of the two protagonists are you saying is stoic just because?
Oh, sorry. And Final Fantasy VII is what I'm still talking about right now.
I'm gonna vehemently disagree that Cloud is stoic just because.
All right, that's fair.
To start, he
To
is
start.
to begin. You know, with his character, he is stoic and quiet, but there is story relevance and reason behind it that we discover as the game progresses.
But anyway, my point being is that Final Fantasy VII decided to stick with, decided to change how their genre was going to work. And then its sequel came out, Final Fantasy VIII, came out as sort of a, how do I want to say this? As sort of a more traditional, yet still futuristic type of background and area. So, let me see if I can get a comparison of those two real quick. I can get an image of FF7 that actually isn't from the remake.
Yeah, it's true. That can prove difficult, as finding the cover on its own was difficult for me.
Mhm.
Like, everything comes up as the remake.
I'll just type in like original Final Fantasy VII or something like that.
There's
Yeah, so anyway, like the point I wanted to discuss at this early on isn't so much about characters, but sort of the background. Like, here's an industrial side of Shinra Corporation. Yeah. Meanwhile, in Final Fantasy VIII, it takes place a lot in this sort of. Man, I need an image that's not Squall.
it's
and
almost
just Squall.
it's almost a pseudo-utopian kind of future design in a lot of
Yeah.
its technology, versus the rustic.
The grit of it.
I'm gonna go with rustic choice, which just means sloppy technology. But yeah,
So I think these are two, because the way Final Fantasy VIII goes into it, it is more of a utopia, more of an sort of art over functionality type of landscape with itself. Because in Final Fantasy VIII, a lot of the landscapes look similar to this, where there's more artwork in its architecture and design for it. Where in Final Fantasy VII, especially the most part when you're in the city, they are more industrialized. It's concrete, steel, and such,
Till
or
you leave.
factory-like.
it's like comparing graffiti to a framed painting in a museum in terms of the way they presented themselves.
Yeah. So I think that's a good juxtaposition. Now, is that bad or good? No, that's just sort of an art style.
Yeah,
Really.
it just is all.
It just is. Like, even with the way that their storylines work, for it works in that sort of epicenter of their storyline, because for Cloud and his posse, they're trying to take on all of start with dealing with a corporation and start with their industrial size before going into the corporate world and then getting out of the whole place at some point. Meanwhile, for Final Fantasy VIII, you start in a high school setting.
That's
In the
true. It is
middle.
a very different overall approach when you consider that in uh, in Seven you're playing as genuine adults that are taking down a corporation, and then you've got effectively children that are just about to graduate high school more or less, and them just getting a independent job.
This was sort of the norm on this, and that's their styles and takes, and I think that's the way to start this whole thing. Is that they're just a type of, that's just sort of a thing that people are doing for that. Yeah, like if you go compare it to from their weapons, Cloud's is basically one giant iron blade, whereas why can't I think of his name?
Squall.
Squall is a sort of a fancier, more stylistic looking blade for that.
It's also a gun blade.
Also, because it has to be guns and a sword.
Yeah, it does.
I think both of their visual styles and designs for the main characters were very impactful. Like they were, when you think of Final Fantasy on the pre 15, like most people are going to conjure images of a Buster Sword and a Gunblade. Like they literally hit the nail like squat in the head in terms of how do we make these games stand out and be remembered. We give them very recognizable weapons that will basically be characters of their own.
Yeah, and so I wanted to start with stylistically where they were going from and where they were coming. For Final Fantasy VIII, you break it down a little bit, it very much seems like a story that would be pulled from an anime.
Oh, absolutely.
Final Fantasy VII, though, would be a story that's more, I guess, grounded, and you would see that more in like a pulp novel of some sort.
I guess I'm a little bit contrarian to that, because I feel like I think 8 and 7 both have their anime-esque.
Oh, they'll all do
vibes, but like
spiky anime
8,
protagonist, A and B.
I mean, 8 is like, 7 is definitely dealing with like the death of the planet, and it is, and like eco-terrorism is like basically what it is, but it's like the planet is dying and taking care of it, and it's a very green message, anti-corporation type of thing like that. Whereas 8 is all about like warfare and the effects of war on different places. These kids who are in high school essentially are in a high school that trains them to be soldiers. Like they are training to be mercenaries and go out into the world and fight for the highest bidder, essentially. I mean,
Yeah, so let's
I say that facetiously. I mean, I totally know that.
oh, I was like, you just played the game. And so it feels a little bit facetious to say that one is more grounded in reality than the other. It's just that
I guess technically we're talking about, with 8, we're kind of touching on the concept of child soldiers, which is really not okay, actually.
yeah, child soldiers sending children into like war zones and
Holy
like,
shit, now that I'm thinking about that, that kind of breaks me, because...
Well, I was gonna say, like, if you respun the story to take place in, like, a third world country where kids might be like taken from their homes at a young age to be indoctrinated to enter some sort of
Or
guerrilla warfare.
brainwashed, yeah.
Yeah, like, it's just, I mean, obviously there's big differences, but there's
No, there's a lot of similarities in there.
yeah, there's a lot. I mean, I feel like it's dealing with a lot of different topics, because I mean, even just in Squall's background, you see a lot of a lot of things that led him to this point. Like, he is, I mean, going back to what Leo said, the moody, aloof kind of whatever, he's that way because of all of the shit that he had to go through growing up. Like, his mom died, his dad abandoned them.
Well, he never knew his father. That was the problem with Squall.
Yeah, and his mom died. He went to an orphanage. He was ripped away from all of his friends. And then he was sent to this school to train from a young age to be a child soldier. And then and they were sent, even in their school, they were sent on missions, like they were training and stuff. And then they were sent
preliminary
on missions. Yeah, I mean, their graduation mission is to literally go to another town
and liberate it.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah, this is really not good.
My childhood.
Yeah, I didn't expect us to literally start dissecting the fact that Final Fantasy VIII is kind of actually fucked in a way that nobody really expected.
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, like, on the one hand, like, I played it at a time when I was like, oh, I love these characters and I love this, but then playing it again when I got older, like, oh my god, the things that happen in this game and the things that happen to these characters, like, everybody who's like, oh, Selphie is only happy-go-lucky and that's all there is to her, literally didn't play the game, because Selphie is hiding a lot of trauma and a lot of pain in her history, and so, and it's just like, even the different gardens are just like, who can train their military better, their child soldiers better than the other.
And let's not even talk about the fact that the things that are behind the creation of the garden are kind of technically just fat ogre aliens, which is which I absolutely hate. And
yeah, there are some parts of 8 that I don't like. I think the orphanage angle is ridiculous. Like,
oh yeah, like this. Oh, the coincidence!
What better place to recruit soldiers
of the child variety?
Not to be confused with soldier, which is what Cloud's from.
Right.
Maybe it's less the orphanage angle and more the amnesiac angle. Like, maybe instead of all of our main characters having been in the same orphanage, maybe it was that all of these characters were in the same orphanage but went to different gardens when they got into school age. Because the fact that Squall, Cypher, Selphie, like, I think Irvine's the only one who knew what was going on, and he was like, well, they're not bringing it up, so I guess I won't. And it's like, why wouldn't you, though?
Yeah, because he junctioned the least up until his graduation, so he had retained more of his memory, which is such a messed up plot point. I don't like it.
It's because if you don't use GFs throughout the game,
it doesn't change anything.
Then it's just like, oh, well.
Yeah. Like,
yeah, now you've ruined the story.
I mean, we were all expecting that to be this. Like, that's why I wanted this cast for this discussion, is specifically because everybody here is familiar with both games to a pretty good extent, with the exception of maybe Leo. But I would expect him to have heard or learned about this from Liz, since they room together. And on top of the fact that, he just likes all the intricacies of unique equipment and items. So
I do.
I'm sure you've researched giant weapons in, just your random perusings of history and games. And the fact that the gunblade is real.
I'll touch with those one later. Yep. It's not very good, if I remember right.
No, it's not.
Eight?
It's literally just a really, really long pistol that's got a really sharp spot underneath it.
Yeah. So
more of a-
anyway, going back to the sequel shock part of it, I feel like a lot of it is just people. So 8 isn't optimized the best in some ways, like
No.
especially the enemies leveling with you means that people like me can get to the final boss at level 20 and then be screwed over royally when they
Oh, you cut out there, Liz.
Sorry about that. Yeah, when the enemies level with you, so then, people like me can get to the final boss on level 20 and then be royally screwed over when the final boss does 9,999 damage and I'm nowhere near where I need to be to be able to,
Do anything?
beat her at all. So there are some very unbalanced parts of the game. And there are some things that, like, I don't know. 8 does get a lot of shit, and I think some of it is not deserved. I think a lot of it is not deserved, but some of it absolutely is. Like, the junctioning system is so complex. And, like, yes, I will watch that 15-minute tutorial every single time I play the game because I have forgotten it since the last time I played the game. If there was anybody who was jumping into Final Fantasy for the first time and decided to play 8, I could absolutely see them being like, oh, Final Fantasy sucks because this one, or, like if they're going to base the series, because, I don't know, you play Borderlands 2, you kind of know what you were getting into with Borderlands 1 and the rest of the series,
Yeah.
So, like, to kind of, if they were like, oh, is this what Final Fantasy is like? I don't really like that. I feel like the junctioning system, the magic system, all of that stuff, needlessly complicated. But, and I feel like that is a big jump between 7 and 8, is 7 had a really good system. I mean, again, not perfect, but it did have a really good system. And then it's like, it feels like Square's always trying to push something new with each, installment.
Right. Well, and
they're always-
they understand that that's the way, the industry is. If you just keep putting out the same exact thing, it's going to become stale to the consumer and they'll stop purchasing it. That's what happened
Yeah.
with Mega Man. That's why...
That's what happened with Assassin's Creed.
Yeah.
That's why they had to stop and be like, oh, we can't just keep putting out the same shit and expect our fan base to be okay with it. Let's take a couple of years off and rework this. And they did, and it worked. And now it's something that's completely different. And now they're doing the same thing where they're just doing the same thing over and over again.
Yeah.
But they still did it, and so Square Enix knows, like, if we, like the battle system and the combat and everything between, 1 through 10 is similar in that it's turn-based.
With the active time system, with the exclusion of 10, because that one's standard turn-basing.
Yeah, but you have, it's the same general principle, but then you have different ways to equip things. And like 7, you have materia. 8, you have the junctioning system, and you have different. I don't know. I feel like one of the biggest jumps is going from a system that works even for people who are new to the series to something that is very overly complicated. And it works when you understand the intricacies of it, but when it's like, do you want to watch this tutorial? And you're like, well, I was gonna go get lunch in 10 minutes, but I guess I'm watching this tutorial instead,
Yeah.
That one tutorial in the beginning with Quistis is so long.
I didn't watch it. I think I
mean, there's
watched it when I was younger,
now.
and I was very upset by it.
There's a lot of guides now that can probably do a better job explaining it, but yeah, I just feel like
I can explain it better than their whole thing did. I mean,
yes. but I feel like that's one of the biggest things that was very like surprising about it, is that it was, I don't know, I mean, obviously you're going from different characters, and everybody fell in love with Squall. 7 was like a resurgence of the JRPG, and then also like making it far more mainstream and accessible to new gamers. And then 8 kind of felt like, I don't know, it felt too different, but also more of the same.
What it is I think that, like, first off, I think we can all agree that it had nothing to do with their art design. I think
Yeah.
the direction of their art was just straight up spot on both games for what they were
And
going for, and it drew in new players as well as the old players.
Yeah, and the pre-rendered backgrounds, those like hand-drawn
mwah.
pre-rendered backgrounds in 7 and 8, gorgeous.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
Yeah.
Sorry, you were like on a tangent, and I was like, no, I just got to get this in there really quick.
No, you're absolutely right on that. Like, I know that Chicho, I know you took some art classes in high school. I don't know if you took any in college as well, but you being an artiste as well as Liz, I think you could probably shed a little bit of something on the artistic direction.
I mean, yeah, like, gosh, dude, high school was it's been a minute.
I don't know if you took anything in college either. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, I guess I did. I did take one class in a community college.
wait, you're not talking about film analysis with me, are you?
No,
Okay.
no, I legitimately took an art class.
I still haven't watched Princess Bride, by the way.
Wow.
How dare you?
Well, so that's the one class we both missed. Because we GPS gave us unfinished directions, so we missed our turn by a lot coming back
wow.
from visiting our friend. You remember that trip? Because then you got
Yeah.
KFC and overdrew your account.
No, almost overdrew my account.
Oh, okay. I thought you actually did.
Like within $2 of overdraft. That was when you still had the green SUV, right, Bulbasaur?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, it's maybe not art like backgrounds or whatever, but just like the approach, like the theme, just the general feel of the two games. For the whole sequel shock component, right? I was so young when these things came out that, like, you know, as a kid, you don't think too deeply about thematics or like the aesthetics of the game, the direction that the creators wanted to go, right? The reading between the lines. But as an adult looking back on it, just kind of the feedback that other people have, just kind of the general feeling people seem to give off. I don't know, 8 gets a lot of hate.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, I can't quite put my finger on like any one thing that just ruins it for people. I mean, I know the draw system's not that great, but as far as art goes, I don't have any qualms with it. I mean, they kind of have similar approaches where it's like, you know, you have a fixed background where it's just an image, and then you have your character models moving in like a two-dimensional plane, up, down, left, right.
Yeah,
But-
overlapping it.
Exactly. So, but you know, when you look at those shots that are shared there, when you see the type of background, like just the art style of 8, and I don't mean to do this, but like if you compare both of these to 9, I feel like 9 kind of goes very, very, very like traditional, but also for some reason some of like the background things in 8, I can kind of see a hint of that in 9, and I don't mean to go off on a tangent on that.
I think you're onto something with that, because I can totally see it in the building architecture for sure.
yeah, I think that's it. Yep, you have the better vocabulary than I do. So
No, I think I
maybe
just
his-
found the
We
word
done
faster.
do the word things good.
Hooked on phonics done me good.
So, but you know, I don't remember exactly where I'm picking this up from, but I vaguely remember a discussion about, you know, the jump from FF7 to FF8, and some people just maybe the fact that Final Fantasy VII kind of brought new life to the Final Fantasy series and like got some people introduced to the whole RPG genre. There's a lot of people that didn't realize that even though they're numbered, they're not actually like sequels, like in the same universe, same story, same people. So some people may have had like a false um, understanding of like, oh, Final Fantasy VIII, this is going to be a continuation of Final Fantasy VII, and so
Yeah,
now
like
you have
this is Cloud's kid or something.
right. So now you have a whole new group of people coming into this with false expectations, and then they're not doing their homework, reading up on reviews. They just jump into this thing and they're like, "What is this?" Like it's not even the same universe, let alone the combat system or anything. It's like it's totally different.
Everything, just everything is so different from what they'd expected after they had experienced 7.
Yeah. I mean, just like there's so many things that are different, right? Like Final Fantasy VII, your character models are different in and out of combat.
Hmm. In
You can
line with
customize the
classics.
color of your menus, and in FF8 you just get gray. You have a materia system in 7 that everything's like color coded. Like, oh, okay, like summons are red and like passive ones are purple or green. It's like your offensive stuff or like things are action based. So like I'm gonna do fire, I'm gonna do cure, stuff like that. But then Final Fantasy VIII, I mean, like we just said, you have a draw system. It's
Learn
like
to read.
learn to read, know what it means. And it's just
Know the rules of the road.
Um,
exactly. It's just I don't know. It's like I don't know if like this would be even a fair comparison or anything because I love eight, but it's like handing a kid a manga to learn how to drive or handing him like a driver's manual. So
Okay,
it's like
yeah.
Final
That's
Fantasy
I
Seven,
totally see it, yeah.
yeah, Final Fantasy Seven is like bright and colorful. It's like a really awesome, well done pamphlet that's like engaging the person reading it. Final Fantasy VIII is a newspaper.
Actually, that's a great
That
comparison for it.
I hate to
Because
say that
like,
that's accurate, but it is.
so because 7 when it came out, this was what PlayStation 1. This was
Hmm.
their big reveal for that, and I don't know how many years it's been between 6 and 7, but I do know that one of the things was they wanted to give it a bigger mass appeal. They wanted a larger audience for it because and this is for anybody else who was back there, RPGs did not have a huge following in general. You would never see like even Final Fantasy, which has the biggest RPG listing on it. It was like one every like 10 average gamers who actually knew what Final Fantasy was or played it. Um, or probably that number sort of was squonky. But you mentioned Mario. Everyone knows who Mario is.
Yeah.
Um,
I and it's a similar thing though too. It's like if people mention Final Fantasy, they know Cloud. That's
and
um
lightning.
yeah. And actually on that same note, I think this should be a segue for another reason why I think it was successful is and comparatively so with 8 not being as successful is 7 had I think the largest marketing budget in America for any RPG in its era because like when you think about it they had like the movie announcer guy do commercials for 7 and
Wow.
that kind of was a huge thing. I mean Square, when you say Square wanted this to have the biggest marketing appeal, they pushed that really, really, really hard over here to try and get a new following. So I think that had a huge effect on just like the number of people that will have started with that one over starting with like 4 or 6.
Hmm.
There was I've been trying to find it. It's very difficult, but there was a thing I found ages ago where somebody was explaining, very funny, um, Final Fantasy, like Final Fantasy according to fans, and so it's like Final Fantasy 7, perfect, amazing, please give me more. Final Fantasy 8, too much like 7, I want something different. Final Fantasy 9, too different from Final Fantasy 7, want something more familiar. I don't remember I can't find it for the life of me, but I remember laughing at that a lot because I was like, it's true. 8 had like so the jump from 6 to 7 did go from like a traditional fantasy style setting, although I mean arguably 8 or 6 is a little bit more is more steampunk than 7 was.
Straight up,
Um
yeah, without
and
question.
yeah, so 6 was like a steampunk high fantasy style story. And then 7 made this drastic jump to a technological based world with a lot of the cities outside of that are still, that are not as advanced as
Mhm.
Midgar, are still just like a typical sort of city. They have, a lot of them have like electricity and running water and plumbing and things like that.
Like the early phases of that stuff becoming common.
Yeah. And then 8 takes that just a little bit further and is like, now we have a high-tech world basically all over. Like there are still, some towns that are, um, similar to like the towns in 7, but in 8 there it's more of a smattering rather than, a lot of what exists outside of the one huge technological city.
Yeah, and most of the towns
Um,
you find in 8 are actually closer, I think, to, modern day of the time, the 80s and 90s era. Just like the vehicles may be a little bit older in their appearance, but their function about the same.
and yeah, so to a degree, 8 is in a lot of ways very similar to 7, but maybe that's part of the surprise of it is like, oh, I wanted something that was as different, from 7 to 8 as it was from 6 to 7.
Okay.
And I mean, I think that's where you're going to find a lot of, especially fans that grew up with the series. Although a lot of fans that grew up with the series will generally swear by 4 and 6.
Yeah, that's true.
But
and then they'll shit on 7, 8, and then they'll praise 9 because 9 is just a 3D version of 3 or 4.
meanwhile,
In reality,
people like me, at least, I don't know. I grew up with a lot of, with the older ones. I did play 4 and 6 when they were on the Super Nintendo. And yeah, like 6 is one of my favorites, but like I love 7. I love 8. I tried to replay 9. Like it's fine. I love 10 and 12. And yeah, I even love 13, but
see, that's the
yeah.
thing too. 13 had a massive marketing push. And
It did.
And it got a lot of sequels, and it even had like the character being like Lightning was selling French clothes. It's like,
oh god, that was at least after I think the second or third game.
right, but
think.
it's the
But
idea
yeah,
behind it that like it's such a huge thing.
Yeah, selling. She was part of Louis. Well, her
Gucci.
and Saz.
She was selling
No,
Gucci stuff too.
Louis Vuitton.
Okay, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, it was Louis Vuitton, and it was her and Saz and Snow. I think there was like a few of them that were doing it, but Lightning became the face of it. It's very similar in a sort of vein to way back when Aki Ross from The Spirits Within was nominated as she was nominated somewhere in like the Maxim's top 100 hottest women of the year.
I want to say, let's save Spirits Within for.
Hang on, I just want to say, like, it's similar in that vein, though. To where suddenly, and she had this poster that I'm about to post in there for you.
The bikini shot, right?
Yeah, the bikini shot where, like, of course she's gonna look hot as hell. Like, they absolutely airbrushed her to shit. She was not that skinny.
Well, and then look at the nipple there. Like, the one nipple stands out super hard in the shadow.
Yeah, and, like, I don't know. Like, they did this. It's very similar. Like, Lightning did better than what Aki did in The Spirits Within. Also, I just want to let you know, because you guys know I love The Spirits Within, it is getting an HD re-release in November.
In 4K, yes.
In 4K. I have it pre-ordered.
I bet you do.
If we want to talk about it in November, I will listen to you shit on it if you listen to me praise it.
That's the system.
The system. However, listen, we can talk more about it later.
Yeah.
I understand why people don't like it.
Yeah.
I love it. But anyway, so yeah, Lightning did have a very big marketing campaign, and I bet if Squall did too, maybe it would have been a little bit different. But this was a different time.
It was. Yeah, Squall would have been wearing all the cool fluffy coats as a model in place of Lightning there. They might have even decided to Photoshop out his big scar.
No, they put concealer on it. Duh.
Well, I mean, oh yeah, okay, because back then, yeah. So they just would have like filled the crevice on his face with a bunch of makeup. And that on that same note, Cypher would have been in the same boat. You would have had like Cypher wearing something standing across from him to like show like competing styles of the same brand. It would have been a huge thing.
Gosh, they should do that now.
Yeah, they should. I say that because I shouldn't be saying it, but it is true. That would be dope. So yeah, I mean, clearly we can say definitively nothing to do with art style. That was not an issue. In terms of
Also, the difference between, I mean, the jump, like obviously the jump from 6 to 7 was incredible. They went from, from 8-bit sprites to fully rendered 3D models, or as rendered as they could back in the PS1. Early PS1 too. And then you go from 7 to 8, and maybe like, yes, we're still sticking with the 3D models, but like the difference between Cloud and Crew and Squall and company, like
detail was out of the park comparatively.
Yeah, so much more detail was there. Like they actually had, like their faces actually had like eyes pixelized or pixelated onto the faces that like blinked in a different way than the ones from 7 did. Like 7 looked very anime put into a video game, and 8 was a little bit more realistic in that regards, like
to show progression and understanding of the system. They definitely made it clear that they had been figuring things out.
Yeah, and so I mean, I know it's not as like dramatic of a jump between 7 and 8 as it was from 6 to 7, but it was still like, I mean, it was still a really good jump. I don't know. I feel like going back like to the art part of it, I still feel like it was done really well. You can definitely see some progression in the art and even in the backgrounds. Like, I'm not gonna piss on 7's backgrounds because they are beautiful, but
there's a reason why people like me go back to it every couple years just to go back through it, and it's not just because we like the combat and the characters. We like the artwork.
Yeah, the art style was still beautiful. Like, I mean, Cloud's little toddling figure going through the train graveyard, which is like a lot more realistic looking, a little jarring sometimes.
Yeah, I mean, the brightness of the models made it stand out and pop, but it also made it easier for you to tell where the hell you were.
Exactly. Yes. And then like 8, it just shows more improvement, like 8 has very beautiful, detailed, pre-rendered backgrounds. And then the characters are also, have beautiful detail to them because Square grew from it.
Yeah, they fit. They fit with the art that's around them, which is a good thing.
Yes, very good.
Yeah, so budget, or not budget, but marketing was definitely, I think, a contender in some way to the to what we saw here, because 7 had a bigger marketing push because, well, it did. I mean, that was Square's goal there, was to make it grow the brand, and it did. So they obviously didn't need as much of a push for the sequel. Mm-hmm. Now, we're going to touch, I think, on the overall mechanics a little bit later, but what do you guys think about the characters? Like, how they're portrayed early and their development throughout?
Okay, I'm going to jump on this.
Please.
Okay.
Please do.
So
I got to hear this.
I was kind of thinking about it while we were on that last subject. So, when you compare the rosters, and it's okay. So, really quick, let me just like define a term. So, there's a term called hermeneutics, which usually historians and like scholars of like ancient texts will use when reading things. So, hermeneutics is like the methodology where you want to accurately portray what is presented. So, you're not trying to. If you're reading something from the 1st century, you don't try to bend it to your 21st century mind. You're trying to see what it was for the audience at that time, like what their understanding of it was. So, with that in mind, like, I think if you look at Final Fantasy VII's character roster and you look at Final Fantasy VIII's character roster, there's a huge amount of diversity with 7's than with 8. And I think with the way our society is today, like that is a lot more attractive and alluring because, and it's like they weren't even trying to do that, right? They weren't politically motivated. At least I don't see any evidence of that being the case. They think they just genuinely just found, for whatever reason, like it just came to them naturally. Like they wanted to have this diverse cast, and like you have even non-humanoids in there, right? You have like a sentient lion beast thing. You have somebody who's black. You have, Yuffie arguably could be like,
Asian
I
of
mean,
some kind. Like
right?
that's the idea. Like Wu Tai is like a mix of China and Japan in terms of its overall culture and
Exactly. And I mean, granted, it's cartoony, but it's like you also have a diversity of like body shapes too, right? You have Kate Sith,
yeah.
right? Like Kate Sith's not even like what the heck is it?
Yeah, yeah. I think we're all still on the fence. Is it a sentient doll? I
Yeah.
mean, what, or is it an actual creature?
And I mean, you even got a vampire, right? Or a guy that pretends to be one.
A
Anyway,
pseudo vampire.
yeah. But then you look at Final Fantasy VIII's roster, and you have 6
White bread motherfuckers.
teens. Like they're all the same age group too, right? Like the oldest guy in the other group, in Seven's group, it would be Sid, right? Because he's like in his. I think if you look at the book for the game, I think he's in his 40s, maybe
Yeah,
late 30s.
no, he's in he's considered a grizzled old man, I believe, is what it says, and he is, I think, like 42.
Yeah,
How
he's like
old is Sid FF7?
36. I'm gonna say 36.
I'm
32 years old.
Oh, a grizzled old pilot, right? Is that what it says?
Yeah.
Next
He's a
week,
grizzled old
I'm gonna
pilot
be-
at 32 because he
I'm
wouldn't
gonna
stop smoking at 16.
So I'm going to be a grizzled old man next week, I guess. So there we go.
I've
I
gone
have been,
past my grizzled
been a-
old madness.
yeah, I've been a grizzled old lady for
Nope, I'm bringing it up. I'm doing it. Sid is a
years.
tough-talking, warm-hearted old pilot who hasn't forgotten his dreams. There's no better pilot by air or sea. He believes someday he'll fly to the end of the universe. With his handmade spear and knowledge of machinery, he throws himself into any attack, regardless of the danger. Sid Highwind, job pilot, age 32.
Biography written by Sid Highwind.
Yeah. Actually, no. The oldest character in your party is Red 13 at 48.
Yeah, that's in dog years.
That's
Then
in
he's
human
a-
years. In dog years,
No, no, no,
he's
no,
like
no, no.
14.
I mean, like that's human years, so dog years, yeah, he's young.
Yeah, no, I get you. But yeah, no, you've definitely got an age an age gap here that's
Fair.
actually solid. Like
Yeah.
everyone should feel included in this.
Yeah. Whereas what is it? The average character that you've played is
17.
maybe 17?
They're all 17.
Yeah.
They're all 17?
Yeah.
I think it's all 17 in the
No,
main.
for your average. Yeah,
Quistis is 18.
17.
Quistis is 18.
Quistis
She's
is
a year
18.
older.
Yeah. In your playable party, I think everybody is about that age, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, and even in like in 7, it's like you did get that range with like something of a range because Tifa and I think Barrett is even in his 30s.
Holy shit, Barrett's older than Sid. What the fuck?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There
He's,
is- I-
he's 3 years older. He's 35.
So he's ancient according to whoever wrote Sid's bio.
according to Sid's bio, written by Sid.
Warm-hearted old. Also not warm-hearted. Sit down and drink your goddamn tea.
He did not say tea.
I don't remember what he said. Maybe I
I
should
mean,
replay it. I've
he
forgotten.
said tea. He said tea in the American version, but I feel like there's no way he said that in the chat. Sit down and drink your goddamn beer.
It's like, I'm only 18. I don't care. I know what I said.
I says what I says.
But yeah, so off of our age tangent, Chicho.
Well, no, that's actually important here because, like, Chicho's right. The casting for these, as far as your playable characters, are all in a big diversity. Whereas for 8, it was sort of homogenized. They're all very similar to each other.
I mean, in age-wise, personality wise, I think both games still run the gamut. I do think
personalities, yeah, they're all
I think
over the place.
7 was also the start of like some of the character tropes that you get. Like I can almost guarantee almost every Final Fantasy, starting with 7, has had like the Yuffie style character, like spunky, young, kind of whatever, like, because it's like Yuffie and then Selfie. I don't really know about 9. 10, it's Riku. 12, it's Penelo, although she's not quite as like happy-go-lucky as the others. And then 13, it's Vanille. 15, women don't exist, so whatever.
If you had to qualify it, I would say it's Gladio's younger sister, but it's very toned back.
Yeah, but I mean, that's kind of something that I notice, is that it does start to lend itself into tropes.
Yeah.
Of a sort, starting with 7, but that's not really a sequel shock thing. That's just, I mean,
That's
that's
not
more
even
from
shock.
that's more from like 1 through 6 into 7, where
It's just like one of my Japanese animes. Whoa.
So like, yeah, I guess if you wanted to compare like the tropes, right? So Final Fantasy 7, obviously Cloud, and then 8's version of Cloud would be Squall, obviously protagonist, right? But
Well,
then
even
they
their
have a lot of
names.
similarities.
Even their names, man.
Cloud and Squall.
Yeah,
Yep.
weather.
And then, like, I don't know, Selfie and Yuffie, obviously there's a lot in common there. I'd say Zell is like a hybrid between Barrett and Sid. Because he's a hothead.
In terms of personality, yeah, definitely.
Quist is like...
It's supposed to be the motherly kind of caricature, like basically
So, like,
the Aerith.
She was also way too young to be like, everyone's like, oh, she's the teacher. She's supposed to be the adult. She's teaching these kids who are her age.
A year younger.
But
Come
God,
on.
no,
Not even a
you're
full 12 months.
older.
Arguably, some of them are like 6 months different.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sub 12 month.
Anyway, the fact that a lot of people in the game try and brush over the fact that she has also had her fair share of trauma, and like when she gets released from being an instructor, she is so relieved, and like I don't think she wanted to do that job. I think it was a good paycheck. I think it helped her pass on her skills, but I don't think she wanted that job.
That's fair. But yeah, I would definitely say she falls under like the Aerith trope of the motherly healer type.
Yes.
And then you've got
So her weapons, very tough.
oh, her weapons are dope. She's just a dominatrix, man. Yeah. Then you've got Irvine, which is literally just a recoloring of Vincent, like straight up. Also, I like how Vincent's job is labeled as unemployed in the manual. When
He's a bum, you bum.
It should say former Turk. Also, what the fuck is with like Kate Sith's job listing in the manual? It says Toyosaurus.
Well, he can't be a Toyosaurus Rex.
He might be.
Also, which part is which is Kate and which is Sith, or Kashit, however you want to say it.
Probably like top down, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking there.
I thought Kate Sith was the whole being, and then the robot part of it goes later, or not the robot part, but like the marshmallow part gets gone later.
That's a Moogle, I'll have you know.
Oh, I actually didn't know that.
You didn't know that?
I didn't. That's so cute.
Oh my god, yeah, no, it's a giant mechanical Moogle that he's on.
Oh, I love it. Well, that robot gets gone.
He's
I
also
don't
got
know.
a rad underbite.
I love him. Oh my god.
I wonder, does
Getting
it actually...
reacquainted with Final Fantasy VII all over again.
Oh, it doesn't say it in the book, but it is supposed to be a Moogle.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it so much.
Okay, so, God dang it, this is really hard to tell, because they're saying his height's 3 foot 2 inches. It's like, is it the cat or the Moogle?
Okay, so based on, I think it's the Moogle part, because the cat part at least based on what we see in the remake, it probably is no taller than like a foot, maybe foot and a half.
I was gonna say maybe 2 feet at most.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that sounds about right then.
Yeah, because like
Yeah, 'cause
Cloud is at least like what 5'8",
he's 5'7".
5'7".
Aerith is
Yeah.
damn near a midget though at 5'3". Wow, Tifa's
I'm
got a
only
whole inch.
5'7"?
Yeah, I'm taller than Cloud.
I feel better about myself.
Aerith is
taller?
5'2", 3".
5'3", yeah.
How tall are you, Chicho?
Like 5'8", 5'9",
Oh,
Not
I'm
for,
somewhere in there.
I'm 5'9".
I'm between
Hey.
5'10" and 5'11", depending on if my shoes and back both cooperate.
I'm 5'6", 5'10" if you count my hair.
Nice,
That's
nice.
true.
Yeah, you do have one heck of a hairdo, my dude.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, boy. Yeah, the
Yeah,
character
okay, so-
profiles are fun.
I feel like this ended up being like we did get into some sequel shock stuff, but we just ended up like talking about 7 and 8 and how much we actually really like them.
Yeah, well, no, that's exactly what this is, and I mean, technically, we're still not done. I think, yeah,
Does it
the diversity thing I think does play a big role in people's acceptance overall of 7 over 8 because yeah, there's a wider range of ages and ethnicities represented within your playable party. So
Indeed.
that's definitely a big draw point.
And the thing that I like about that
Point.
too, the thing that I like about that too is like, I don't think it was like the team was trying to target specific people in that. Like there was no ulterior motives. It's just like, hey, just for diversity's sake, let's just have a robust group of people that, each one of them can have their own specific traits. It's like, oh, okay, that one separates them from the rest.
Well,
But there wasn't like a thing of, oh, we have to make this quotient of like we need to make sure we appease these certain people groups. It's like, no, just let it happen naturally, and we'll just have a nice blend of options that somebody can find somebody in this group to associate themselves with.
very true.
So,
Yeah, I think part of it too is part of the theming is involved with that because I mean, they're all coming after a corporation, and I think the idea is that if we can all come together, we can overcome the insane obstacles in front of us.
yeah.
And I mean, it does like all the characters are from like all over the damn planet. Like let's talk about that for a second. You've got like Aerith, who's from God knows where. You've got Yuffie from Wutai on the complete left side of the map. You guys start off roughly center right, and I think Barrett is from a little bit to the north of the map, and then Tifa and Cloud are basically the northeastern area for Nibelheim. You've got southeast for Red 13. Sid, I think, was southwest. I don't remember exactly where all these places are on the map, but it's like it's literally a team of people from literally everywhere.
Yeah. And they all have diverse backstories too, which you don't get all of that with the whole roster of 8.
Oh yeah, no, the whole roster of 8 consists of 2 backstories. One, my dad is a general, and the other is I'm from an orphanage. Those are your backstories. I wish I was kidding, because I'm looking at the the casting that Leo just showed. I'm like, yeah, nope, that's both of them.
So I don't want to get too meta here, but just to piggyback off of what you said earlier, because it sounded really like awesome. But Final Fantasy VII's cast, right?
Mm-hmm.
So diverse group of people, different backgrounds. Maybe they don't even have the same ideologies, but they found one common goal, and they were able to put differences aside to unite under that. So I think it's like, if anything, if somebody really wants to read into it, maybe that's not necessarily a message that it is explicitly there, but if you want to try to pull that out from the game, you can. Is that, look, in life, you're going to cross paths with various people from various backgrounds, upbringings, beliefs, but it's like you got to find some place of commonality, and you should be able to put those differences aside in order to like bring each other through whatever obstacle it is that you're facing together.
Very true. So yeah, there's definitely a like the appeal is there for the cast, whereas Milk Toast for 8, um, man,
Hey kids, you want to take down the man?
oh, okay, yeah, thanks, Keanu Reeves. Cyberpunk 2077.
You burn this city.
Wake the fuck up, samurai. Ah, that game's better than people give it credit for. Anyway, so the character diversity could have been a part of the shock to the system that we were experiencing. You had a lot of different representation, which would have appealed to a wider audience. You had the bigger marketing push, so that got a lot of attention for 7 really early. So the big change up in that between 7 and 8 could have potentially turned off a lot of people. However, it's time for us to get into the element I think that was the biggest turn off for a lot of people, which was the radical change in the way the combat worked, where you in 7 had the familiarity of buying and selling your spells in the forms of materia, similar to earlier Final Fantasies like 1, and the use of MP for your magic casting, which had been used since, I think, Final Fantasy at least 3, maybe 2, up until then. In 8, they completely got rid of MP altogether, and instead you drew casting counts from environment and from enemies for different spells, and then you had to link them as equipment to your summons, and then link your summon to the character, which was hindered ungodly by the fact that Square did not give the US team a full script list. So they had to use a Game Shark to translate and play the game themselves.
Oh my god.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
Wait, what?
Yeah, so that's the history of 8 and why there are so many issues with its translation and the tutorial and all that. It's because of the lack of giving the translation team a script. So in order to... I think actually there is even one NPC in the game that if you talk to him, he just speaks and he has just a Japanese text. And it's because they didn't speak to him when they were doing their translation. I feel like I read that somewhere. I don't know how accurate it was, but that's a part of the reason for the multiple ellipses you see from Squall is because that was an error in the Game Shark translation where it probably just threw back the generic square in place of a character in your text, like that kind of thing is probably what it threw back at them. And since they had no context for how he was supposed to have responded, they just put in the ellipses, which in turn ruins his character depth and growth in progression through the story. So, yeah. Also, that game is the only one, I believe, of... that one has of the 3 PS1 titles, had the longest between games, I think. I think from 7 to 8 was 2 years, and then from 8 to 9 was only 1 year. You had 97 for Final Fantasy 7, and 99 for Final Fantasy 8, and then we got Final Fantasy 9 in 99, and I believe we got 10 in 2000 or 2001.
I think 2001.
But that was a big console jump and graphical change. So I mean,
Yes.
Granted, only adding a year for that is impressive in hindsight. So
Yes.
But yeah, the translation was a god awful nightmare, and that totally made it impossible for people to properly learn the junction system through their tutorial.
That was very elucidating. I had no idea that was an issue.
Yeah, right? I believe it's touched upon in a book called Legends of Localization, but I could be mistaken. But yeah, I did a little bit of research on that before because I was like, why does some of this not make any sense? And then it's like, oh, well, That's like being given a giant middle finger from the developer.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. But I think the biggest flaw, honestly, of the junction system is the fact that you're penalized for using your magic once you've junctioned it. Because the more counts of casts you have, the more powerful that stat increase will be for
So
its
if you
junction.
start using magic,
So, I mean, when I did my last playthrough of it, I barely used magic because if I did, it would lower my stats. I think they could have mitigated that by instead having an MP system and making it so, oh, you still have to draw from enemies and draw from environmental points to learn the spell. And then you junction the spell that you've learned to that area, and it has a fixed stat increase. And then you still have to cast from MP. That way, you're not literally being punished for using a function of the game. So that's my biggest tangent. Is it's like that's such a simple fix, but you know, they didn't do that.
I mean, I'm trying to give them the benefit of the doubt. I really don't like the draw system, right? But
Right.
at least they were trying to change up the way we thought about magic, where it's always been, oh, you can use this indefinitely as long as you have this special ethereal energy within you called mana, however you want to pronounce it. It's like,
Right. Well, and then make it so when you draw too, it also replenishes your MP, so that gives you incentive to draw from your enemies.
all right.
Oh my god. It makes sense. You're pulling their mana into yourself. Story relevance!
oh my
But
god.
but it is weird that, like, okay, so I can suck magic out of an enemy, but I
With a
can't
big swirly straw.
but I can't steal stuff from them unless I learn Mug.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. I think also, for that's a great way to have hid summons in GFs is like that's how you get Siren is you use draw on was it the boss at on your first training mission, like when you're up on the tower, you use draw on that and it's just question marks like, oh, what is that? Oh, it's a GF. That was cool, because it's super missable. But it's like, oh man, I got this cool new thing. It's like, oh look, it's so powerful.
Nailed it.
Yeah,
But honestly, that's
that was 10-year-old me.
But yeah, but that's probably its biggest draw on this. The drawback anyway is the
Ha.
drawing. Ha. But like I put the images on there. The materia system, you just stack it, click it, and it adds a certain stat for your stuff.
Again,
Junction menu.
fixed system too.
I don't know the difference between why I would equip Ultima for my strength instead of triple. It apparently triples the spell for my strength.
It's effectively allows you to cast another spell triple 3 times. And yeah, I mean they don't explain exactly why. Unfortunately, one spell is better in this slot than another. But to give you a little bit of a rough breakdown, basically, if it's a healing spell, it will be most beneficial in like your spirit slot, your vitality slot, or your HP slot, because it's about healing, so it's going to affect your defenses and your health. Okay, well if it's an offensive thing, like like let's say it's fire or Ultima, that's going to be most beneficial in something like your strength or your magic or even your hit percentage. But then you've got something like triple where that'll be really good in like your evasion or in your HP or in your speed. So it's like it's kind of tailored to the type of magic it is. But in some cases it's like, why the hell does death give me full life? What's happening? Why do I have 9999 with death? It's like, I mean, I guess you can kind of say it's the reverse factor there, but it's like there's a number of them where it's like, why is this not giving me more here, but it gives me more here? Yeah, there's no good explanation for it.
Yeah, it's just harder to figure out, and I need a guide for the junction system alone.
Yeah, you really did. Which, I wonder if they saw a large number of guide sales for 8 over 7. Actually, that now I'm curious.
If it was saying it, the answer would be no.
What the extra content? You've heard of the Donut Drake costume. How about the Donut Everyone costume? That's really not okay though. But yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like most of the systems in place in 8 are a really good idea on paper, but they slipped up by making the effect of their ideas too broad in terms of their use or effect, and that kind of hindered the overall experience. So, I don't know. That's just me tangenting a little bit on. It's like, as I was playing, I'm like, this little thing, this one little thing could fix this mechanic. I still played through the whole thing. I still beat it. I still did all the side quests, including the ones that were confusing as hell. So, which again, I think the translation kind of hurt the side quest because it's a lot of go here, get in random battle here, experience this, go back here, get another clue that doesn't make any sense, and do it again.
Correct me if I'm wrong. Isn't Final Fantasy VIII the only Final Fantasy game where combat does not give you money?
13.
Yeah, that's true. 13. Well, I think you get a lot of items that are sellable, though.
Yeah.
No, yeah, so that was the trade-off in 13. But in 8, you do have just an allowance. Basically, it's your salary for being a soldier of Seed. And you can take a little quiz about, game mechanics or story stuff or lore that will increase your rank within the company. And then you will that'll increase your payout, which I think happens like every 15 or 18 minutes. So that's a doable thing. And then you maintain your rank by continuing to do combat. So if you don't do fighting, if you don't do a lot of combat, if you keep running from battles and avoiding that, your status and rank will go down, and therefore your paycheck will get smaller. And then you'll have to go do the quiz thing again to get it ranked up, or do a lot of random battles to bolster that again. But yeah, there's never an issue of money. I think at the end of the game, and I had maxed out all of my G potions, my G returners, my normal potions, my high potions. I think I ended up buying, I had 100 of basically everything I could buy. I was like, I'm not playing this game. I am playing this game, but it's like, I don't want to worry about this simply because none of my characters had magic on their command bar, so that way I couldn't be tempted to reduce my stats.
So here's the thing. This might be where they were trying to head towards it, but didn't do it right. So some systems will have what's called an anti-grind system. The idea is that this way you could avoid having to, because in Final Fantasy VII, you had to grind up pretty well to just get anywhere into that, right? At some point.
It depended, I guess. Like, if you made a left turn instead of a right, if you decided you wanted to try and fight the Zolom right away, you'd get wrecked. Or then if you did beat it, you're like, yeah, I did it, and then another one came at you, and then you'd scream, oh fuck.
But there was a lot of things
that on the overmap.
But there's a lot of things in 8 that's designed sort of to work against, too, to be an anti-grind system. You never had to worry about money because you got it as an allowance, and you just would have money. And if you knew enough about those quizzes, you could max it out right at the beginning of the game.
Which I did.
And you would have, and your battles did not, because everyone scaled their levels to yourself, it was designed around having to not... That way you did not have to worry too much about getting into combat as much, because there's not that big of a benefit to being into combat, However, with the draw system in there, you needed to draw from each combat, so you're back to grinding again.
Yeah,
You're
it
grinding
just
for something
it
else.
totally does change the grind,
Yeah.
especially if you used magic. I mean, then you'd have to get into combat. You'd have to fight certain creatures to draw the magic out of them, which, again, it's a grind but in a different way.
So
Yeah.
here's how I kind of overcame that. Um, so for me, I usually only stuck with 3 characters. I didn't revolve through all 6. But what I would do is when I would find the certain enemies that I knew had the magic that I wanted, even if I only wanted it for one character because of the buff it would give, I would just max out that magic for all 3 characters.
Yeah, and then spread it out.
Yeah, and then spread it out. And so it's like, okay, this person has these 4 different types of magic equipped, so they're not going to be able to use those ones in combat. They can use the ones they don't have equipped. And if that starts to get too low, then you can just pull magic from the other people to refill it back to 100 if you wanted to. But
So
it's more like, okay, Squall can't use fire because he has it equipped for his attack, but he can use Blizzard. Um, and then somebody else might have Blizzard equipped for their thing, but they can use fire. So it's like, but in the rare circumstance where I need to have a character use a type of magic that they also have equipped, then I could just rob from somebody that's not using that magic in their equipment to fill it back up to 100 after the fight.
yeah, I ran into an issue doing similar to what you did with that. Is that look, this person has fire. Well, my fire's maxed. Okay. Oh, but this one has Fira. I'm gonna max the same character with that, and then just swap the junction magic because it'll just be a stronger magic. Well, the problem is you can't delete or sell or throw away any of the magic you've drawn. The only way to get it out of your stock inventory is to cast it. So I got to a point where I had everyone's magic full, everyone fully equipped with stuff, and I could not draw any of the newer magic. So
Oh,
I ended up
Wait.
having one character that I had the magic command on their attack bar, and I would I just was like, okay, well, I'm gonna just grind out a bunch of battles, casting Fire 1 to get rid of it all, then transfer it from another character again and do the same thing just to get rid of all my low level spells.
You can only have a certain number of spells before you're like,
Full up. 8 pages.
really?
Yep.
Oh,
It's got 8 pages. And I was pissed because I didn't realize that. And I had like, oh, look, I've got, ice 1, water 1, fire 1. And I had a lot of it on a lot of characters. I'm like, shit. So then I literally got to a point where I just had a magic caster throwing all the weak magics out during battle just to spend them so I could get to the higher end magics like the flares and the comets.
yeah. You know what's interesting too is they don't really explain what magic is in that Final Fantasy 8. In 7, you got, hey, the
It's
Earth.
crystallized Mako, yeah. I mean, it's
Yeah.
you actually have relevance and understanding there, but they
'Cause-
have magic in 8 and they have a sorceress, but why does it matter?
Yeah, I don't
'Cause-
know. She found a way to hold
More
Uh,
magic, a ninth page.
1,000 units of each spell, and she just went around the world just sucking magic out of all the different creatures that there are.
Behold, your feeble 8 pages of magic. I have a 9th. Haha. Yeah, no, it's there's some elements they could have elaborated on better, which would have elevated a lot of things. But you gotta give them a little bit of credit because they did translate that entirely almost with a with a Game Shark. And honestly, now that I think about it, there's a number of people out there who don't know what a Game Shark is.
or
Because
Game Genie.
Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
Yeah. Yeah, they're basically they're hacking devices that allowed you to alter the code and of a game and what is displayed on screen and in the game. So like, oh, you're having trouble fighting this creature? Well, you can use this device to make it so your character can never be knocked out.
God
Therefore,
mode.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and those were a big thing during the 90s and early
I loved-
2000s.
Yeah, I loved the game genies because they all come with like a certain set of games on them, and
Mhm.
within those games a certain number of cheats or whatever. So it wasn't like every game had infinite like changes that you could make, but they were incredible. Like, I don't know, God mode was one of my favorites that I've ever used because Illusion of Gaia's later levels are bullshit and they control leveling so much in that game that like I needed God mode at one point.
Yeah, it's a bygone thing, unfortunately. In fact, if you wanted to see what a Game Shark looked like, you could go to the YieldTomato Gaming YouTube channel and look at our playthrough of Lifeline. Because speaking of bullshit, that game is, and actually, even on the thumbnail for it, I'm gonna find the link now because I want to share it. I put in a little bit of a kind of a hint that I might have used a thing, because the thumbnail has a Game Shark logo, fin kind of coming up. Copy. Oh, no, not that. Copy link. And is it going to show it? Hey, look what's peeking up at the bottom of the thumbnail. I think like the first 10 or 15 minutes is me putting in the code that we needed because the Game Shark disc I had didn't have anything for Lifeline on it. So I had to find a website that had the Game Shark coding for the game to give myself infinite life because we literally were at a point where we couldn't get any more healing items and the game was not understanding what we were saying. We didn't know what we needed to say to alter an event. I hear a cat purring. Holy criminy.
That's my baby Phoenix.
And so we got past that part and then come to find out it was only infinite health for Rio, the character, not for the player as a whole. So the last fight, we had a health bar, and it was like a weird, like half voice control, half controller thing, which we had not really done throughout the rest of the game. And we died a couple times on that, and I couldn't find a code to give us infinite life for that. So, yeah. Yeah, Game Shark was a fun thing, even just for experimentation in games. But yeah, I think we might have come to some of the obvious conclusions of why the general gaming public was kind of shocked by Final Fantasy VIII in a negative way, which was a mixture of its cast and a little bit of the obvious being the gameplay mechanics and its translation. I think those were...
Yeah.
Like, the obvious one was the translation and the mechanics, but I think a subtle one might have been the very one-note character selection we had.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Not a lot of variety in there. And I love 8. Won't defend that though.
Yeah. I have come to really appreciate 8 more in the years, both because I have learned to understand the way the game is to be played, and also understanding the crux of the story and the difficulty we some of us had known about and some of us are learning about, and even more that comes to light every other day, it seems, about the troubles of localization. So, yeah. Anyone got some final thoughts on
On
the...
this Final Fantasy?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. There you go. There you go.
Nope, I don't think that I do.
Nothing comes to mind, really.
The only thing I would say is, you know that Square knows that Final Fantasy VIII is the stepchild of the series because in Kingdom Hearts they renamed Squall to Leon.
Well, because Leonhardt, you said.
Yep,
Well,
because his last name.
Yeah, they say that, but I bet it's because like, hey,
Well, someone
nobody
even-
knows who this guy is anyway. Let's try to revitalize it.
Somebody even tries calling him calling him Squall, and he goes, "It's Leon now."
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and
Kind of like a nod to be like, in case you want to know who this is, look up Squall.
right. Well, and then you've also got the other information on, or the other, I guess, not information, but the hint that it's kind of a redheaded stepchild to them, being that though Final Fantasy VIII was one of the first ones to be ported to Steam, it is also the only one that uses fan art on the Steam page for its banner on the original Steam version. And it was the very last of the 3 PlayStation games to be ported in a remastering to PC.
Mm-hmm.
And that one was unfortunate because it took a lot longer. And they didn't fix the translations.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's that's one thing. If you look into any of the information on the remastering, they'll actually talk about how they didn't update the translation, and that was kind of a sour point for a lot of people because of the issues that they had with the original translation. They would have expected that the remaster was going to include some updates to fix that, but nope.
Instead, they went with no.
Yeah.
For a change of place.
You know,
No.
we could update that. It's like, but how about if we didn't? Oh, hush, Esper. My cat's crying in the background on my end, too. Although, he's probably in another room, and of his own will.
Aw.
Come over here, cat, and I'll pet you.
Yeah, sometimes Phoenix will run out into the living room and then just scream, and we're like, what?
It's like, we're right here. Jeez. Chill. Chill them kitty titties.
So cute. All right. Well, I feel like we.
This was productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Very productive conversation,
Indeed.
Quite. Yes.
Yes, indubitably.
including blowing Brandon's mind about one of the themes of Final Fantasy VIII.
Yeah, well, I mean, you don't think about that when you're a kid watching it, and your parents probably didn't understand it. They're like, what's that Nintendo thing? And you're like, it's a PlayStation, Mom!
Yeah, but you also replayed the game recently.
Yeah, that did help. Well, this guy started it like 3 times in the past and never got past disc 2 before. So, anyway, thank you all for joining us today. Don't forget, you can check out a videocast version at youtube.com/YieldTomato. You'll find the link in the description there for our speakers as well. Hopefully you'll join us again for more of the magic that we all enjoy on the screen. Take care, everybody.
Bye.